All right. Well, hey, happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back to another future-focused weekly update where we are bridging the intersection, something like that, of business, technology, human experience. I've been doing this for 5 years, and I still can't get it straight. But all that said, the content's still going to be the same. I'm going to run through some of the biggest happenings at that intersection and just share my thoughts, feelings, reactions to hopefully help you stay 10 steps ahead and just help make sense of some of the chaos that's going on right now and break it down. So if this is your first time listening, thanks for joining. Hopefully you find it valuable. And if you've been following for a long, thanks for your continued listening in, and continue sending along stories, feedback, things like that. I love making this as valuable as possible for you. And if you could, be a huge favor if you liked, reviewed, shared, all those fun social things. So with that, let's get into the 5 that I have today. I've got some legal stuff that's going on. There's some interesting things happening. But first, I want to start by OpenAI. They are in the news for a lot of not great reasons pretty frequently. And they made the news again because Miles Brundage, who was he was the senior advisor to the AGI, artificial general intelligence readiness team. So he was basically, in short, what that very complicated job title was he was in charge of safety and governance over what OpenAI is doing as it relates to some of this very advanced, cutting edge stuff with generative AI. And so he left, and as a result, the team was disbanded, and they ended up moving it. I can't remember what it was, but they ended up moving it. Now it's like a sub team under their chief. It got moved underneath an org, which happens all the time. Senior leaders move, and then they aren't really sure what they're going to do with it. So then they bump it under some other executive. So while some of the headlines were really calling attention to how, oh, look what they did, this is obviously a statement about OpenAI's view on safety, I think we do have to be careful with how much we draw conclusions from this, because from my vantage point and having been in the senior levels of large organizations, when very senior people leave, they got to do something with their teams. And some of it's just purely tactical, because somebody's got to run team meetings and make sure that performance reviews get done. We're coming into the end of the year. Somebody's got to do the performance reviews of their teams. And if it's unexpected, which it seems like it definitely may not have been completely planned, organizations are kind of scrambling to figure out what to do and how to, pivot from things. So I don't necessarily, my reaction to it wasn't necessarily, oh, this is clearly a statement on OpenAI's position on safety and the future of where things are going. But this is now the second safety team that has fallen apart, let's just say, in not that long, with comments about OpenAI's position on safety and how they're prioritizing it, not necessarily always being bright and shiny. Now, granted, usually when people leave an organization, it is very common that, hey, it wasn't exactly everything they wanted, and they may not always have the best things to say, and their opinions may not always be 100% objective. So we do need to be careful how much we read and interpret in, the new or the former leader of that group leaving. At the same time, he wrote a pretty lengthy Substack post about his reasons and what he's doing. And in it, there were 2 things that I think really stood out that we should be paying attention to. So one, he mentioned that he wanted to influence where all of this technology was going and kind of have a role in shaping that from outside the industry rather than inside. Now, I don't know. I didn't do a ton of research into what's happened since. I don't know if he's landed another position already or what exactly he's looking to do. I know he wants to do more with kind of the governance and the regulations around some of this stuff. So if he hasn't already, I wouldn't be surprised if it pops up that Miles is in some advisory board in some government agency, or he's doing contract work with that kind of thing. That wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know the details of it yet. but he wants to play a role in that. And I actually commend him on that, especially when we look at what OpenAI, they've made a major shift. And I know they've taken some major heat for this, but in some ways I can understand why they're doing what they're doing. So OpenAI has made a bit of a shift from being this kind of cutting edge research institution, which is why to more of a corporate entity looking to commercialize some of the stuff they're doing. And as a result, research is very expensive. It's very costly. It's very time consuming. And so there are some people within OpenAI who have not necessarily been super happy about it. Now, I would say I've played around with a lot of the AI models. I still feel OpenAI's stuff is some of the best. So it's not like they're falling behind, but they're making this position to say we're less of a research organization focused on the advancement of it and more of a how do we transition into commercializing and productizing what we've produced. Some of that's probably just purely coming from the fact you got to make money and you can only keep taking grants and investments from organizations for so long. At some point, you got to start turning a profit. And so it didn't surprise me when OpenAI made that shift. But for folks who want to be in the research space, that's not going to necessarily be well received. They're going to want to go do other things. Now, I get the impression from what I could find on Miles, that's not really what he's looking to do. What he really wanted to go do is have an impact on how this stuff will be managed and governed. And one of the things that I think we need to pay attention to whenever some of these folks step out is one of his comments was OpenAI is not ready for what they're building, and neither is the rest of the world. And, that's always one of these cryptic things you hear from people. But if you've listened to my stuff for very long, I share that same point of view that in many regards, I don't think we realize the power of the tools that we're building and the technology we're creating right now. And you can just see it, and you're going to see in some of my next updates, we're being really reckless and careless with some of this. And so I actually commend Miles for stepping away, not necessarily like, oh, I don't like OpenAI, but he's like, I want to go do this. I want to go have influence on a scale outside the tech organization. And I think what he's getting at, and I would completely agree with this, is it is very difficult to influence governance and regulation within a company that makes money off the thing it's creating. It's like when you see some of these companies going, we're doing an internal investigation into whether we did any wrongdoing. And wouldn't you know it, they didn't find anything. It's like Mr. Beast investigating his own allegations right now. He's like, yeah, we're taking a look at this. You really think anybody trusts and believes that the investigation you're going to lead into your own organization is going to uncover stuff? Now, every once in a while it does, but it's usually this sanitized, downplayed version of things. And it doesn't result in any real change. And I get the sense that Miles is going, and based on previous things I've seen about OpenAI, and it's not just OpenAI. I want to be really careful about that because they keep taking punches. And there's some things I've seen and people I know over there where some of it's well-deserved, but I don't think they're this unicorn in terms of how things are happening. So I do want to be careful how I represent them. But from what I know about it and his statements and his very lengthy Substack post, I think he felt frustrated that he's seeing some of the stuff that's happening going, holy cow, this is serious. And we seem more concerned about quarterly earnings than we do about what we're creating. And I need to go out and I need to go work for an institution or an organization that is not going to be overly biased towards performance and earnings than they are like, hey, can we make sure this thing is safe? Can we think through some of the long-term implications about it? And I think we need more of that. If you've listened to me for very long, I've talked at length about the fact we need people focused on safety and governance and regulation around this. And I know people get up in arms sometimes about, the government I'm not suggesting one institution do this, but we need to do something. And I think Miles stepping away is yet another indicator that there are people on the inside going, we are playing with plutonium here, and we're acting as though it's no big deal and we'll throw this around. So it's going to be interesting to see how OpenAI responds to this, what they do. Like I said, until all the details are out, I tend to be generous with my opinions. And again, I know some of just the corporate stuff going behind this, that some of the sinister stuff that's being thrown, I think is not fair. But it is going to be interesting to see how OpenAI responds and their focus on safety, as they, like every other AI company, is continuing to try and push the boundaries of artificial general intelligence, artificial super intelligence, all these other things. But really what we're just talking about is further advancements in AI and its capability. So more to come on that. But once again, OpenAI is in the news. But I do think that should lead us to go, hey, we maybe should also be thinking seriously and pushing seriously for some of these safety regulatory needs that are being left just basically unchecked. And in that transitions to number 2, because here's what happens when we don't. Okay. Now, this one comes from Meta. There's been this huge push for the states, people kind of coming together, wanting to take legal action against the big social media players. Meta really is, they kind of always are the one everybody goes after. It's super funny sometimes to me how people kind of don't take the other ones quite as serious. I don't know. Maybe people just don't like Zucks. I'm not sure. But Meta is the one in the news right now because they're trying to deflect the responsibility of the catastrophic effect social media has had on young adults, teens, and just society as a whole. And so the states have been trying to pull together a lawsuit against Meta and bring it, there. And it got brought before a judge. And Meta kind of came in and said, well, according to Section 230, we should be shielded from any of the implications of what, we just make the tech. What people do with it, that's not our responsibility. And so it wouldn't be fair for us to be sued and held legally responsible for some of the catastrophic, terrible things that are happening to people that are being directly shown as to result from social media, which that's always kind of bothered me. I'm sorry, but if you're creating a product and putting it out there, I understand there's a line where you can't control everything that can happen, but to just go, we can do whatever and it's not really our fault, it's up to you. That I've never liked the fact that it has felt like big tech has been able to get away with that for a very long time. And everybody's looking at this going, this is like not going well. And they're going, not our problem yet. Anyway, but so a judge got a hold of this thing and Meta came in and said, hey, we shouldn't, you shouldn't be able to do anything. Right. Wink, wink, nod. And the judge was like, no, I don't agree with that. Section 230 does protect you from certain things. However, it does not give you full immunity from legal action. And one of the things that this judge, what she really pointed to, and I think this is a fair point, is there were a lot of misleading statements that have come out that have highlighted that, hey, you know what? Maybe social media companies, maybe the big tech companies did know more about the consequences of this and maybe didn't do anything about it, or maybe even went so far as to kind of mislead people, distract and redirect people from what actually is going on. So it was a judge, it was a U.S. district judge, I can't remember, in California, where this is. Now, it's not just Meta. The other big tech companies are also, lobbying for this and all this stuff. So ByteDance with TikTok is in there, Google's Alphabet for YouTube, Snapchat. They're all kind of in here going, hey, whoa, because this will set a precedent. I mean, if federal judges start upholding that, no, you don't just get full immunity from the consequences of your products, we're going to start to see this go. And honestly, I've talked about this before, but I think what's happening with social media and maybe in some degrees tech in general is going to start to feel a little more like what we saw with big tobacco. I mean, there was a time when I worked for big tobacco, if you look at my resume, for a period of time, and it was after the regulations had hit. But I talked to people who'd been there for a long time, and they openly talked about the fact that they really thought they were untouchable for a period of time. Like, tobacco companies knew what they were doing was killing people by the thousands. And they just kind of went, yeah, but we don't make people smoke, so it's not our fault. And they really thought they were untouchable until they weren't. And I think that's what we're starting to see. I don't think we're there yet, but this move with Meta, I think, is a positive one, because they have really been able to get off with this whole Section 230 thing, dismissing them from any accountability for their products. Now, of course, Meta's pushing back, going, "What? But look, we implemented teen accounts for Instagram, and look at some of these other cool things we did. We never said it was safe. We never said anything like that." It's like, come on. And I actually, the thing about this, and I get you got the media and legal and all this other stuff, so you got to be careful, but it's not a good look when all the data is clear that social media has had a real negative effect on people. When you have parents who literally are like, I've lost my kids, like they've taken their lives or things like that. And the response from big tech is not empathy, is not anything. It's almost just this cold, you know what? That's not true. We are not responsible for what our products do. You are responsible for the choices you make and everything. I just don't like when there's just such this cold, isolated response. And I'm next 2 weeks from now, I'm doing a leadership webinar on leading authentically. And that actually is one of the areas that I'm leaning into in that topic, is to talk about the fact that when things are uncertain, there is this position when you're in leadership to feel like you have to completely disconnect yourself and just completely keep everything at arm's length and not be empathetic and kind of give the company line. And that's really what the big companies are doing right now. They're going, look at all the good things we're doing. Look at how we've implemented this other stuff. It's not really our problem. These are all false allegations. And it makes them just look foolish. Like, are you kidding? Do you not see this? And then the problem is, and this is where I think they might find themselves in big trouble, is all it takes is one whistleblower to leak email logs. I mean, this is what happened with tobacco. So if you're a younger person and you weren't here when all this went down, but like, this is what happened. All of a sudden, all the emails from like the executives started getting leaked, or the executives are like laughing about, the statistics and showing no regard for human life whatsoever. And that they know, safety experts are warning executives and they're just dismissing all these claims. They hit so much worse when you've just gone on record saying, we had no idea, this is not true, all this stuff is false. And then whoop, all this stuff comes out and it's like, oh, wait, I thought you said this. Oh, well, apparently in this email, you said exactly the opposite. And it ends up hurting them a lot worse, which this is just wisdom in general. When you're lying, when you're deceitful, when you do all this crap, it's going to come back to haunt you. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Now, the lawsuits haven't gone forward yet, but this was kind of they're pushing for lawsuits, and they took it to a judge to see where it would go, and thinking they could use Section 230 and just get the whole thing dismissed and move on and go back to doing whatever they want with little to no ramifications. And the judge was like, nope, not going to happen. You're going to have to see your day in court. So I'm actually really curious to see how this starts to play out in the coming months and years, as I'm guessing there are going to be class action lawsuits. I'm guessing some of this stuff. Now, to be fair, all right, and here's where I'm not defending the tech companies, but I am going to speak to, parents and just individuals in general. I don't appreciate, while I don't like necessarily what the tech companies have done, how they've kind of shrouded, we're not responsible, how I do believe even when they saw things going in a wrong direction, do I think initially they planned it to go the way it did? No, I really don't. I don't think they did. Although if you look back at the history of Facebook and why it was built and how it was built, you have to go, come on, if that's what it was built on, did you really think there weren't going to be consequences coming from this thing? But I don't think there was this malicious intent to create a platform that would lead to depression and people taking their lives and ruining the fabric of society. But I think at some point, people started recognizing it. But going back to just like I said with OpenAI, when the priority is increasing earnings, when the priority is making a bigger market share, whatever, you kind of shove those things to the side and you think you can get away with it till you can't. That said, I don't appreciate when parents or adults or whoever don't seem to want to take any responsibility for themselves either. Okay, this isn't 100% on big tech. You know, as a dad of 8, yes, my kids are my kids, and there are decisions they're going to make, and there are going to be outcomes that may be outside of my control. But I also can't just go, well, you know, I can't do anything about it, and then give them free rein to do whatever they want. And then when they do stuff that gets them in big trouble, go, hey, what am I supposed to do about it? It's not my fault. Like they're their own people. Come on. If you're a parent and you're not involved and you're not overseeing and having a say, and you're going, well, they just want to. They're throwing a tantrum if I won't give them a mobile phone with unlimited access to social media. You're the parent. So while, yes, I think there should be accountability and responsibility, and I'm really curious to see what comes out of these lawsuits, because once they start summoning things and things are brought into account, you know, we'll get a better picture of, I mean, how much did they really know? How much was this intentional? And how much was it truly just a mistake? But regardless of all that, even if it was malicious, you can't completely relegate responsibility over to the tech companies. And so that's not only talking about past behavior, but that's me speaking to any individual or any parent today. I mean, if you're hooked on social media, yes, there are things social media is doing to make it more addictive, that is intentionally trying to do, but you're not this completely, you know, zombie being that has no control over yourself whatsoever. And so there is a level of responsibility that people need to take for themselves and their children. So that's my only pushback, because I do see a lot of that not happening. And it's easy. And I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. I know myself, when things go sideways, that initial tendency is to want to like blame shift. Like, well, oh, that went really bad. Who else can I blame other than looking in the mirror? And I think they can both be true. And so if you're hearing me thinking, oh, so you're saying it's not the tech company's fault, you're blaming. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm also saying it's also not 100% their fault, and both can be true. Both parties can hold some responsibility. And when I see people go too far on either end, I think it doesn't go well, and we don't actually solve the problem is the biggest issue. When we don't think about things holistically, we don't end up solving problems. And that's really what I want to see. All right, now the next one, we're still in lawsuit season here. This one's tragic. And this one has to do with AI, not, I mean, social media is also AI related, but this one specifically with AI. And if you listened last week, I talked about the tragic story of the dad whose murdered daughter was discovered on Character.AI as an avatar, which he was not happy about, rightfully so. Well, Google and Character.AI are getting sued now in an official wrongful death suit. And so this is, I'll have to be careful how I talk about it, or I'm going to get crunched by the algorithm. But basically, a 14-year-old, Selwell something, anyway, 14-year-old kid took his own life back in February of this year. And it happened just seconds after his last interaction with the bus. So they could tell when the timing of all this stuff went down. Now, again, tragic story. Can we 100% say the AI is 100% responsible for this? I don't think that's fair. First of all, one, because it's impossible to know what really happened. But based on the details of the case and this child and his involvement with this Character AI and some of the loose reins around this stuff, I am 100% in support of this wrongful death suit moving forward. This is a tragic story. And it's one of the things I have been warning since this stuff started popping up is, gosh, people, do not. I know on the surface, it's like, oh, it's so entertaining. Won't it be fun? I can talk to my favorite movie characters and ha, 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 ha. It's not okay. And it is going to go sideways. And please, parents, do not let your kids mess around with this stuff. I know not every kid that goes and interacts with Character AI is going to go down this path. I know that. But the fact that any of them might be heavily influenced to follow the same path by it should in and of itself say, you know what? I don't necessarily know how I feel about, AI replication of people or characters or whatever, and people making friends with AI bots. You may have mixed feelings on that whole space in general, but for kids, please, can we just universally agree? It is not okay for kids. Like, they don't have they are not cognitively developed enough. They don't have the emotional maturity. They are very vulnerable, and we forget that. And so to give them access to these AI bots that can do who knows what and talk to them and influence them and say things to your kids that might not only not be appropriate, but it might tell them to do stuff, and they're going to listen because it's coming from their favorite cartoon character or whatever. It's not okay. And this is a really, really tragic story that shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. And I hope that this family gets justice for it. Now, I hope this family, if they have other kids, takes it seriously and goes, you know what? We are not going to let our kids mess around with this. And again, I don't know the situation, and that's why I don't want to place any judgment. So first of all, one, don't hear what I'm saying and think this is in any way victim shaming. It's not, because one, I don't know the situation, and I know how quickly this stuff can get out of hand. The whole thing's just tragic, period. But I hope parents hear this story and go, you know what? Maybe I should go check what my kids are doing. And maybe I should pay a little closer attention to what kind of apps they have and what kind of websites they're using, and maybe dig into it. And maybe this thing that they insist is just harmless fun. Maybe I need to be the not popular mom or dad and say, you know what? I know you're having fun with this, but we're not going to do this. You're not going to be allowed to do this. It's not okay. And I don't want you developing friendships or emotional bonds with fake AI characters that just aren't governed. And you know what? You want to throw me under the bus? Say, I listened to Christopher Lind, and he's got 8 kids, and he's got a lot of experience in this space, and just based on the risks, you can throw me under the bus if you want. I will happily lay under that bus if it's going to protect somebody else's child from not falling victim to this. And so, of course, just like with Meta, Character AI is responding back with like, well, we're going to make changes. We're going to restrict this to not being used by kids under the age of 18, which good. But then, like, how are you going to regulate that? Kids are smart. They know how to get around. What, are you just going to put a thing on, put in your birthday? You think kids can't do basic math and do it? Like, I would be very curious. How are you actually going to mitigate the risk of children under 18 using this? How are you going to prevent parents from signing up and then just giving their devices to their kids, or kids logging in with their parents' credentials? And I mean, there's more to it than this. Now, granted, they also are working to do more detection in the responses and things like that, changing, looking for things that violate the terms and community guidelines. Because the reality is, especially kids, but grownups are no better, people are looking for ways to exploit these things. They're looking for ways to jailbreak the character. When the character responds, well, I don't think that's something we should be talking about, people's natural tendency is to go, well, let me see if I can figure out how to get you to do it. It's built into our human nature. And if you know me or have listened to me for very long, you know that my position on that is it's coming from our sin nature. You tell me not to do something, it just makes me want to do it more. You tell me these are the rules, I'm going to try and figure out how can I break the rules, or how can I get as close to the rules as possible without officially breaking them, bend them to the very point in which they snap. It's just, we have to fight against that. And kids are not in a position to do that well. So I appreciate that Character.AI is responding. My question is, why weren't you doing some of this stuff before? I mean, this isn't the first. It took being sued because a 14-year-old took their own life for you to go, maybe I should, do this. But like some of the other stuff, they're like, oh, we're going to put a disclaimer on it to remind them that it's AI, not a real person. That's not going to help. No teenager, no adult is interacting with a character on Character.AI and going, oh, this is AI because I actually thought Sonic the Hedgehog was alive. And I mean, come on, really? And some of this stuff is like, that's the best you can do. And also one of the other ones that I was like, I guess, like, oh, it's going to give you a notification when you've used excessive amounts of time in a session. Are you going to put a big dismiss button on there? Because we're in the attention economy. And I can promise you, the investors of Character.AI and the execs whose bonuses are based on the performance of Character.AI, I mean, they don't want to get sued, but they also don't want you putting your phone down if you're in a really intense session with one of the characters and, this warning comes up and actually turns off the device. They kind of don't want to do that either. And so I'm really curious how the app is going to change as a result of this. But I also hope that this lawsuit moves forward and actually makes tech companies think twice about it, because this is the kind of stuff that I think Miles back at OpenAI, he's probably seeing even more than this. But this is the kind of stuff these folks who are close to it are seeing and going, hey, we got to think about this, or we're going to end up where we are with social media today. And the thing with AI is it's not going to take decades to get there. It's going to take months, maybe years, for us to see real harsh consequences from this stuff. And so my heart goes out to the family who lost their child. I can only imagine what you're going through, and I'm so sorry for that. And to other parents, please don't let your kids mess around with this. Be attentive, kind of like the social media thing. Be a parent. Know what they're up to. Know what they're involved with. Be monitoring it. Sometimes it's okay for your kids to get grouchy at you because you have a boundary or a barrier that isn't popular, or maybe their friends' parents aren't holding. But for the sake of the protection of your children, it's worth it, because you don't want to be the parent on the other side of this. And it's not worth it. Okay. Number 4. This one I came across last night. I thought it was interesting. So the CEO of Chanel, the fashion brand, the big, I don't even know. I'm not a fashionista. Is it if you're a guy, are you a fashionista versus a fashionista? Anyway, I'm not big into the fashion space, so I don't know much about it other than I would probably recognize their logo. But anyway, the CEO, Lena Nair, went off to Microsoft. She was at the Microsoft headquarters and was doing some stuff. And it made the news because she asked ChatGPT to create a picture of her senior leadership team. You could probably guess, I'll give you 5 seconds to think about where you think this is going. So blind prompt, one-shot prompt for Gen AI, ChatGPT, to create an image of Chanel's senior leadership team. What do you think that picture was? If I had the Jeopardy music and wasn't going to get copyright striked, I would play it right now. But I think everybody would be able to tap the buzzer on this one. Wouldn't you know, the image it popped out was an image of a bunch of white dudes in suits. And this made the news because she was extremely bothered by it and frustrated and all this stuff. And of course, Microsoft's kind of reeling back, going, oh, we know about bias and it's not good and all this stuff. And here's the thing. Okay. And to me, what was most frustrating about this situation is things like this, while they can be good because they can be the kind of thing that incites change. And we all know, or anybody who's been around AI knows, AI bias is a problem. Okay, it's a challenge that has to be overcome. AI is super biased because it's built on training data. Training data is biased, and so AI companies are constantly trying to figure out what kind of bias is baked into the data. How do we mitigate it? How do we prevent that from happening? All this other stuff. But here's the thing: you're not going to get rid of it. And I feel like sometimes these things, that's what it's going for. You know, people get all triggered because a one-shot response by ChatGPT came out with a highly biased, inaccurate view of this, and people go, see, AI thinks men, you know, it's misogynistic and it's blah 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 and all this stuff. And yes, there's bias built into it because it's built on human data and people are biased. And so those biases are going to get pulled into it and all this other stuff. Yes. Should we be working on that? Yes, we should be looking for ways to mitigate it. And this goes back to things I said through these other things. It can't just be a this or that. Yes. Can we be doing things to mitigate bias, do a better job of figuring out how to do it? Yes. And this is exactly why we need people, everyone, to increase their digital acumen and understand AI and use AI properly. Because if you use AI improperly, which in my opinion, what she did was an improper use of AI. It is not the right way to use it. It's just not. It's not the right way to use it. And I didn't get a chance to see what the exact prompt she used is, but I would almost guarantee that if I were to take a look at the prompt, I would go, yeah, you misused AI. And that's why you got a highly biased, not accurate, one-shot image created off your poorly structured, poorly applied bias or prompt. And they both can be true. Yes, we can try and do more to reduce bias in AI. And yes, everyone needs to be responsible for improving their skills and knowledge in the use of tech. Now, you might go, what are you talking about? She asked for an image of Chanel's senior leadership team. It should have got it right. Well, here's the thing, and this is why without knowing what the prompt is, I can't fully critique it. But I'm guessing if literally the prompt was create a picture of Chanel brand's senior leadership team, it probably just went off all the data that it has, which we know senior executive leadership teams are often not balanced. They are largely made up of white old dudes. And so that's the data that it has. And so when it gets a very generic response, senior leadership team of big brand, it's going to create what the majority of the data tells it. It's just predicting mathematically what it thinks that is. Now, had she specifically given it detailed instructions, I want you to research all the members of the Chanel C-suite, gather that data, look for images of them. Then I would like you to create a portrait of that senior leadership team sitting in a conference room, you know, whatever. Like, I guarantee they would have gotten a more accurate picture. Now, what's funny is one of the articles that wrote up about this actually tried to do a one-shot prompt, and they got a very different thing. Now, here's my bet. Because this went sideways, someone somewhere knew that everybody's going to hear about this, and one of the top prompts that's going to be coming into AI is this. And somebody went and quick adjusted the filters so that if somebody asked for a picture, and I'd actually be curious if you want to experiment with this, go out and ask ChatGPT to create an image of Chanel's senior leadership team, because one of the news sources tried to do it, and suddenly it was a diverse, you know, men and women and of all cultural diversities all over, you know, and it was like, oh, weird. It's almost like this happened, and then somebody went, uh-oh, some other people are going to try this, and we better not, you know, we don't want this to become a social media trend of like, hey, what's your thing? So let's quick fix this. So if it doesn't happen now, okay, Don't then hate on it and go, this is BS. I tried to do it and I came up with a, diverse multicultural leadership team. This is totally bogus. Nah, somebody went in the background and made a change knowing that everybody was going to try this the second they saw that. So I guarantee one-shot prompts for senior leadership teams suddenly got a lot more diverse and multicultural. I can tell you that right now. But I don't think it's fully fair to blame OpenAI and Gen AI for doing this. And this is why you will get, I say this so many times, AI gives you what it thinks you want. That's it. That's the bottom line. So if you're very generic, it doesn't really have a whole lot of detail. And so it's going to go back more to its training data and go, well, I don't know specifically what they want. So let me mathematically calculate with some degree of accuracy and probability what I think they want. So the more detailed your prompt, the less work it has to do to guess, the more likely it is to not be biased. Now, it's going to pick up on your own bias. So if your prompt is biased and it's, boy, can it read details. You think, oh, I gave it a really balanced, objective prompt. It picked up on the choice of words and the structure and the intensity of your sentence and how you described it. It'll pick up on all those patterns and then go, let me find other ones that sound like that, and it'll give you what that is. So the point of this is you just got to be really careful. And any one-shot thing you do, I've been in conversations with people where they think they're like, aha, I got you, Christopher, because see, I went out to ChatGPT and I typed this and I got that. And I'm like, yeah, what did you think you would get? Like I had one the other day, somebody was like, see, ChatGPT, this was talking to some of my conservative Christian friends, and they were like, see, ChatGPT is woke and liberal. I asked it how the world was created and it gave me, evolutionary, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, first of all, let's not even get into positions about the Bible not being a science textbook. But that aside, like, how about let's just talk about the fact that what do you think the majority of days? And you were so vague in your thing. So you just got to be really careful with this. This is why I tell people, don't just copy and paste what comes back from Gen AI, because the reality is it's going to be biased. It's going to make mistakes. It's not going to get things right. And ultimately, it's just giving you what you think you want. So be careful and learn from it. And don't get too up in arms when it doesn't give you what you want, when maybe you should have asked it differently. And can we do more to reduce bias in this? Sure. Yes. But we're never going to get there. So if you think we're going to wait around for the perfect unbiased AI model, think again. All right. The last one was a study out of MIT that I thought was pretty interesting. So there's, this is one of the things where I had this question. I don't even remember where it came up. Somebody asked me this on a panel or something the other day, or maybe it doesn't matter. You don't care where it came up. The fact is it came up. Somebody was like, what should AI do? And what should humans do? Like, where are humans better and where is AI better? And this is a really big question coming up in business and in life and everywhere. Everybody's trying to figure it out. Like there's this one-shot answer to it, which that always bothers me because there isn't. My response to this individual was, it completely depends. What may be reserved and best done by humans in one situation may actually be better done by AI in another. So let me give you an example of this, and then I'll get to the actual research. So some people are like, interpersonal skills, anything interpersonal, it's better for humans than AI. Universally, if it's a human-to-human interaction, it should always be humans, not AI. Wrong. That is not true. There are times when I would much rather, because it's a transactional interaction, I just need an answer to my question or to be moved to the next step in the process as as quickly as possible. I don't want to talk to a person. Even if it's a person-to-person interaction, it's not the kind of interaction I actually want to be talking to a person about because I don't care. The value of the experiential component doesn't matter. I just want to get through it. Or maybe as a company, you're looking at customer experience and you're going, for this thing, the human to human customer interaction. That's not the point for this. Well, then use AI for it. And another company may go, no, this is critical. We want the first experience anybody has to be with one of our human employees. And that is part of our value proposition. It's part of who we are. Okay, great. Then don't automate that. But don't be mad that another company does and it's working for them. And so this whole idea that there is universal metrics for when AI works and when it doesn't is just silly. Now, the research, okay? Now, what this wanted to do was look into this same thing. Where are humans better? Where is AI better? And where is human plus AI better? Now, I am going to have to start retracting. Well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm not going to retract this because one of the things I say all the time is humans plus AI is always better. Now, this research is going to make it seem like, aha, Christopher, you got to eat your words because the research shows humans plus AI is not always better. My response to that, and this isn't me just playing a politician, is if you're narrowly, myopically looking at a single task, okay, I am not saying it is always better if you have a human and an AI doing it, okay? If you're being super surgical and myopic, like scanning 300 pages and writing up a one-page summary of something, can a human plus an AI in doing that, is that better than just AI doing it? No, because the human having to scan 100 pages and trying to look through the thing, like, well, no. Now, if you're going to do something with that, should a human be involved so that it makes sure that, like, is this accurate? Is it like, well, yeah. So it still is true that humans plus AI produce better outcomes. But where I think you got to be careful with this is you can get really myopic and go, see, Christopher, you're wrong because AI is better at this thing. Well, duh. There's things AI is better at than people. I'm not saying AI always needs a person to hold its hand in everything it does. That would be literally impossible. So I'm clarifying, all right? I'm clarifying my statement lest somebody send me an email and say, you were wrong, Christopher, you got to eat your words. But what it came back with is it looked at this stuff and it found some actually were kind of surprising. On average, okay, AI and humans perform significantly worse than the best of humans. Wait, is that right? We found on average, and I'm looking at my notes here. AI combinations perform significantly worse than the best of humans or AI alone. Okay, yeah, now I remember because I actually went and looked at the research on this. So essentially what it says is when you try, and actually this makes sense to the analogy that I just gave. When you try and jam AI and humans together on a specific thing, it doesn't work as well than if you just let the human do its thing or you just let the AI do its thing. If you try and like force them to work together, it actually performs worse. That's what it was. Because I actually went through and I was like, wait, this doesn't make sense. And then I actually looked at how they researched and how they dug into it. I was like, oh, that does make sense. Like I said in my example, if you were like, okay, AI plus human, read this 100-page thing and produce a summary, you would be better off just saying, human, you do it, or AI, you do it, rather than go, let's forcibly fit these two things together and see if the AI plus human outperforms it. It's like, well, it's not going to. It's not going to. Even a human by themselves can do a better job quickly scanning and writing up a brief summary of this thing than trying to forcibly smash AI and humans together. I think about it like multitasking, where people are like, I'm such a great multitasker. But the research shows you actually can't multitask. Your brain can only focus on one thing. So what it's really doing is shifting gears constantly. And that's the part that I don't think the research fully fleshes out. And it's hard to interpret that. That's why I had to go through. And even as I was reading my note on it, I was like, wait a minute. Nah, why was it that way? Because really what we're seeing is the same thing that we see in our human brains. Like you can't merge AI and humans together. And when you try to, it actually performs worse. You have to They actually need to switch between each other. So the second thing that I thought was interesting, though, this one was kind of interesting, but then it made sense as I thought about it, read it more, and then actually just kind of thought through my experience in human behavior. There were significant performance losses. AI actually did better in decision-making than people did. Surprise, surprise. And this one wasn't like the, oh no, it doesn't make good decisions and then people mess it up. Now, by the way, as I dug into the data, and this is one of the things that I think could be misinterpreted, so watch out, is, oh, AI is really good at decision making, so you don't need to oversee it. You could conclude that if you believe that already and try and read this research, and it's super long. So if you try and go into it, you could extrapolate that out and go, aha, this is why we're going to make AI our CEO, because this research proves AI is better at making decisions than humans or humans and AI combined. Wrong. But what is correct about that is humans actually kind of mess up its decision-making ability, because in some ways, AI will do something based on empirical data and all this other stuff. And then it comes along and humans have this tendency to go, I lead with my gut. I lead with this. And I know AI is telling me, all the research and data is telling me that this is the right decision to make. But my decades of experience tell me that that's stupid based on butterflies in my tummy. So never mind AI. And then the research shows like, well, you idiot. Like, no, AI outperformed you. You actually messed it up. And so in some ways, I think this is where it is good that we do lean on AI for decision making. It's the research to me actually validates that it is good to lean on AI for this, because it does a good job analyzing data and coming up with this. Now, this is why I wouldn't just say, so make AI your CEO and then call it a day. Somebody has to look at what data is going in there. And somebody has to make sure that the data it's using to analyze this is accurate and correct, going back to bias, that it's not unbiased, all this other stuff. Like, somebody has to cross-check this, make sure the right data is being fed, make sure it's the right data, that it's quality data, like all these other things. Somebody also has to be prompting it for specific things and asking and cross-checking AI to do it. So you need people involved in the decision-making process. But where, to me, looking through the research, it falls apart is when you do a good job of that, and then AI comes back and goes, I took all that input, I looked at all this stuff, I did all the cross-referencing, and here's what you should do. And we go, yeah, no, I don't feel good about that, because that just doesn't sit well with me. Which we know that screws things up just from a leadership standpoint. We see this in corporations all the time. Senior leaders hire some of the most brilliant minds in the world to come in and do stuff, and they do it. And then they come to the senior leader and go, here's what you should do. And the senior leader goes, yeah, nah, I don't like that though. So I'm not going to take, and it's the most debilitating thing ever. This is exactly what's happening with AI, and what the data proved is if you do that with AI, you're going to make mistakes. So should you use AI for decision making? Yeah, you absolutely should. And the data is overwhelmingly proving that you actually can put a fair amount of trust in it. Should you structure it? There's my nuance to that. Should you structure? And so does AI win in decision making? Well, in this component of decision making. But again, do you need to combine that holistically? So again, this isn't a Christopher C, you're wrong, AI is better. Like, yeah, okay, myopically on this, but there's all these other factors. Now, the other thing, though, that was really interesting was, despite all these claims you hear about AI being so creative and it can just imagine and come up with stuff, wrong. It was not at all. It found massive, humans just crushed it, absolutely crushed it when it came to creativity and coming up with new ideas and whatever. Now, once again, though, you could go, aha, see, AI will never touch creatives. Wrong. AI needs to be prompted. Humans are good at creativity and coming up with things. Humans work well when they then have AI to take that creativity and do something with it. So that's where reading the research, and gosh, I already have seen I've seen articles on both extremes of this, cherry picking data out of here and not thinking holistically about it and going, see, creatives are immune from AI. No, they're not. And it will change your work and it will affect things. I've seen other ones go, AI can do all your decisions for you. You don't even need people anymore. Wrong, and go that path in your peril. And so it's frustrating actually having dug into the research and going, yeah, I mean, there's some interesting findings in here, but the at the root of it, it's still very consistent with the things I've been seeing and saying and observing for a very long time. Now, one of the final things that it came out with that I thought was really, really interesting was when humans outperformed AI alone. So like in this, and this was really interesting. So when creativity, okay, so when humans outperformed it, and then you added AI to it, you actually got a superior product, which makes sense because you're actually accelerating, you're amplifying what it is. Where AI did a really good job decision-making, when you tried to jam humans into the mix, it actually got worse. Which, again, could you interpret this the wrong way and go, oh, so just let AI do its thing and keep humans out of it? Honestly, as I looked at the different things and the way they structured things, I'm like, that's not what it's saying. But what it's saying is, like the example I used, AI does this comprehensive research and comes back with a decision, and then humans go, yeah, well, that's not the way I would have done it, and that's not the conclusion I came to, so I'm going to go with my gut. Yeah, it was exponentially worse of an outcome versus on the creative side, humans are creative, they bring AI alongside, and there's even greater gains when AI. Well, that makes sense. So it was interesting seeing a bunch of headlines and going, now I'm actually curious what the research says and what the conclusions are and how this was structured and what actually went into it. And going, yeah, actually, most of these articles that have cherry picked this stuff, which is true of everything, aren't even accurate representations of it. So I'm going to wrap this week because I'm a little longer than usual. I was a little amplified today than I normally am. Is just, gosh, be careful with research, or be careful when you read things that say research shows. Like, take the time, go over to nature.com and actually download the research by this MIT. Like, go look at it. I mean, it'll put you to sleep probably. It's long as all get out. But take the time to do it and actually look at what does it say. Because honestly, sometimes you don't even need to read the whole research thing. You go to the actual study, go look at the biases on the bottom, and look at the findings, summary of the findings on the top. And normally, if you do those and you take time to think critically and factor in how do they do this, and then actually start looking into, okay, how did they structure the test? How many people were involved in it? It starts to come together in a way that would not if you just glanced at the headline. But I know that's something I am continually telling people, please don't respond and react to just what you see in the headlines. So anyway, that's what I got this week. I know it's a little longer than usual. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your Friday. And yeah, we'll see you on the other side.